The sailor was packed tightly into the Seaside café. It was a filthy, odorous place for which to take refuge from the equally oppressive tropical night. The air inside pulsed with the noxious mixture of wood smoke and something else that might be cherries rotting in a puddle of rum. From a nearby table, one of the café's own denizens peered at him with what was surely something less than kindly eyes. The sailor saw the figure of an exotic dancer, a vision the air made more material than it otherwise would have been. The very red like you would not believe, was all over the place, surrounding her with its intensity. The way it clung to her form was just scary, like something you would see in a nightmare. And her grimace was even more nightmare fuel than that. The creature before the sailor was Bruna, and she was both captivating and repellent. She moved almost effortlessly, with a hunter's litheness, toward the sailor. The man's spine shivered with a kind of primitive fear at the mere thought of her being anywhere near him. And, oh yes, she had a smell that nearly knocked him out, a sickly sweet aura of jasmine that veiled a whiff of death underneath. Only an old seafarer would recognize that old odor. "Do you mind if I interrupt, sailor?" She purred, her voice as smooth as silk, permeating his very existence. As much as he tried to, the sailor could not ignore her. "Do you come from the sea?" she asked, her words coated in a sweet venom. Hearing that, the sailor, who knew the sea all too well, felt a chill in his bones he'd never before experienced. He managed a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He could taste the salt on his lips, and it didn't make his dry throat any easier. "Yes, miss. Fresh from the sea, the salt air clings to me like, well, you know." He laughed a little. It was a sad, bitter sound that the ocean breeze just barely carried away. Bruna moved nearer, and her lips turned a smoky blue. Instead of a normal mouth, she revealed a slimy opening lined with uneven, ribbed, fang-like structures. The smell of her jasmine perfume turned to a sickening, overpowering odor. "Salt," she whispered, the syllable almost touching his ear. Such an inadequate stand-in for the sweetness truly called for. Something had changed in her voice. It came now with a low, throaty rasp that made him look at her oddly. With each word, his mood was darkening further. Paring down to the bare essentials, disappointment was a worthless, trite little feeling that had no place in the cosmic stress ball of anxiety he now held in his gut. Mankind had faced down so many gnarly horror show elements over the eons that one would think there was no image, no concept that could cause their breath to stutter or their blood to run chill. What had her rejection really meant? He wondered, both rhetorically and with an intensity that tore at something deep inside him. Were he just a repulsive and inferior being, undeserving of someone as wondrous and as powerful as she? As soon as he was about to say something, an awful tentacle slipped out from under her clothes, wrapping tightly around his leg. It was so strong, it felt unreal. Then came the grin, the stretched to breaking point grin that showed every last tooth and made you unsure if those teeth really belonged in a mouth. "Maybe, if there is a next time, sailor," she rasped, "you will return to share a story that is more sweet, shall we say?" His heart was in his mouth as the monstrous tentacle whipped itself free from its underpinnings. He could almost hear the victorious war cry it gave as it stretched out toward him. The direction in which it went was not up, however, not toward the pub's ceiling, but down. It dragged him after it, just as a prize captive might be dragged along to the victor's home. But instead of the home of the victor, it led him deep into the hole of the sucking whirlpool behind the horror vacui of the sempiternal human face. And still, everything went bottom up in that swift journey until it ended. The first thing he saw after that last moment of splendor, that of the descending party, was the last flash of the party dress, the splatter of red on black, unadorned, against nothingness.